Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. In this series of videos, I'm going to be building a Street Eliminator class drag racer. Drag racing has become really popular all of a sudden, and the club that I race on-road cars with is going to start doing some drag racing a couple times a month. So I thought I'd put a car together since I had a suitable chassis. There's 4 or 5 different classes. One of them is based on a specific Traxxas vehicle, the Bandit. It's a 2-wheel buggy class. This class, Street Eliminator, is based on any 2-wheel drive short course truck. That has to be the base chassis. From there you can modify it pretty much any way you want, any type of motor. The only restrictions are a 2S battery. The tires have to be rubber, not foam, and the body has to cover all 4 tires, and you have to have 4 functioning shock absorbers. Other than that, you can pretty much do what you want. So I'm going to be doing a lot of changes. I had been running an on-road truck class with this, but I was just getting killed by the 4-wheel drive trucks. 2-wheel drive just wasn't keeping up. And then the transmission got damaged. I basically burned out the differential gear. And so I ordered some spare parts for that and just had it kind of sitting and wasn't sure if I was ever actually going to do anything with it. And then this popped up. So I'm going to be narrowing the chassis by swapping out the short course truck arms for some buggy arms. And I'm going to be doing the mid-engine setup. This is a TLR 22. It's the original Losi short course truck, not the 2.0 or the 3 or the 4 or even the 5. There have been multiple iterations. I'm not even sure they're making the 2-wheel drive short courses anymore, at least not as a kit. In any event, it's a great way to go if you can get your hands on one of these used and you want to race in that Eliminator class, because it allows you to either go mid-engine or rear. And mid-engine definitely has its advantages because the rotation of the motor puts a certain amount of downforce onto the chassis, putting more weight on the tires. A lot of people are using the old TLR's short course trucks to do exactly this. So there's a lot of things that are going to change. I'm going to go through the entire process in video and show you a lot of just general build techniques, like how to rebuild a ball differential properly, things like that. If you are interested in getting into drag racing, you can watch the entire series, and I'll try to get as many part numbers and things of that nature. And so if you do want to go with a 22 and build up from there, you can follow along. So I've got the body on order. I'm going to be doing things like I spec'd out ceramic bearings for the transmission. I'm not going to bother with ceramics for the things like the front wheels, but the entire transmission is going to be all ceramic. And that's where you got the stresses and the really high internal RPMs, and you want that low rolling resistance. I'm not going to do ceramic bearings even at the outdrives, at the hubs. Regular bearings will be just fine for that, as long as they're clean and oiled. That's going to be just fine, because that's just turning at the rate of speed that the wheels are, whereas the internal bearings in the transmission reach some really high RPMs. Things like the slipper clutch and tuning the diff. I may even try a locker diff. I actually bought a couple extra diff gears and a couple extra outdrives, and I may try making a locker, basically drill through the 2 outdrive discs and skip the ball bearings altogether and just drill some holes through the diff gear and bolt those three items together so it's a solid single piece. I also have a replacement for the standard clutch, the slipper clutch, which is basically a locked out gear drive for that, so there's no slippage whatsoever. Some people are really big into the slippers and, you know, swear that it's essential, and there are also people who are running a locked pinion gear, or the drive gear with no slip at all, and swear by that. So this is kind of a mad scientist Frankenstein kind of class. In fact, the whole range of drag cars is very much a DIY kind of environment. A lot of people are, you know, just mixing and matching parts and figuring out what works for them. Excuse me. One of the interesting things is, depending on what base class you're starting for, you can sometimes run in multiple classes. For example, when I'm done with this, I'll be able to take out that 2-cell battery and put in a 3 or 4 and run in the 1/10 unlimited class if I want to. I might have to make some other changes to be competitive in that class. It also depends on what other people are bringing. And then there's the truck class, which again doesn't have that battery limitation like the Street Eliminator class does. So there's a lot of options there to have some fun and tinker, and there's going to be some great video opportunities showing you some drag racing, and that's going to be a Saturday thing. The club is going to continue to road race every Sunday, but a couple weekends a month we're going to get together on Saturdays, if it's not raining of course, and do some drag racing. This is everything and then some that I need to convert my TLR 22 into a 1/10 scale drag car. Specifically for the Street Eliminator class, that is a class that is based on short course truck bodies. Any motor goes, any body goes, as long as the body covers the wheels. That's one of the main stipulations. You can't run like a buggy body, has to cover the wheels and tires. So with the 22, that means it's got to be narrowed a little bit, and I'll go into that in just a second. You have to run a 2S battery. You can't run a 3S. So you're restricted for power in that realm. But pretty much anything else goes, with the exception of any type of traction control or steering assist. So you definitely need to get one of these. You need to have a wheelie bar, and a long wheelie bar is definitely preferable. There are 2-wheel and single-wheel wheelie bars, and they both have their benefits and their drawbacks. One of the benefits of 2 wheels is that by tweaking it, you can choose which tire touches down first, and thus correct for the car heading off in one direction or another if it's doing that. There's better ways to deal with that issue than tweaking the wheelie bar, though, like adjusting spring tension and things like that. But I'll go over all that later in a tuning video. But in any event, I am starting with this. It is a ball bearing wheeled carbon fiber aluminum spacered wheelie bar. I've got a dedicated drag motor. This is a Trinity motor, and it is a 3.5 turn motor. So it's extremely fast, excuse me, 2.5 turn. It's extremely fast and powerful. This is about as specific to drag racing as it gets. So let's talk about converting the 22 short course truck. You may have to deal with this regardless of which type of truck you go with. You have to have the truck chassis, but you can modify the suspension as you wish. The arms are the issue, front and rear. It's going to be too wide. So let's see. And this is one of the nice things about the 22 series. The buggy arms will swap over. So I have a set of front and rear 22 5.0 buggy arms, and these are a stiffer than the stock arm. It's a Stiffazol is the name of it. In any event, let me just compare for you. Let me go ahead and pull one. Okay, there's an easier way to do that. Because this is something I'm going to be moving on to directly. So, just as example, if I were to hold this over this one at the pivot point, you can see we are about a ½ inch shorter, depending on which of the two holes we use to put our kingpin through. So it can be, there's also 3 shock locations, and it has a ball for a sway bar, which we're definitely going to be using. I have front and rear sway bars for the TLR. So once you swap over the arms, you have other things to deal with. For example, these turnbuckles are now too long by a decent amount. So I picked up a turnbuckle set for, again, the 22 5.0 buggy. I also picked up a set of dog bones, and I already had a brand new set of full rear axles with all the various parts for my truck basically as a spare, and I never needed them, but since I have them, I just bought the dog bones. So if you've got good axles still on your car, you don't need to buy the whole package, which is like $35 or $40. You just need the $16 axles, and they will switch right out, and because it's the same type of CV joint, so your axle shafts and everything else will all work together. So this is going to get me the right axle length that I need. Now, from another project, I had already modified the shock absorbers. The rear shocks, I was using the same rear end shaft with extra spacers and using a set of front shock bodies. So I still have my full-size rear shock bodies. And there's a possibility this winter that I may convert this back from being a drag racer to being an off-road car for some indoor racing. It's unlikely. I'm probably just going to run my 4-wheel drive Slash and a 1/8 scale buggy that is on the way. In any event, though, this gives me a lot of options. I also have a set of rear 22s, which you can probably see right off the bat are shorter than the rear 22 short course truck. These are buggy shock bodies, but they are longer than the fronts. So this gives me a variety of options. I could use these in the front to have a longer shock setup, because you can always just, you know, modify the throw of the piston with spacers and things like that. I've got an extra set of rear arms and an extra set of fronts. So I've basically got any kind of option I want as far as building up these Losi shocks. A lot of people are running a front shock in the rear as well as in the front, and in the front they're putting a bunch of spacers underneath the piston to limit the amount of throw. That is the other stipulation for the Eliminator class, is that you have all 4 functioning shocks. They can't be locked up. You can't fill them with spacers so they don't move. You have to have them at least have some suspension movement front and rear. And again, a lot of people are doing you know, the shorter shocks in the rear. Now, you might go with the shorter shocks, shock body, but use the longer travel arm, or excuse me, shock shaft to make up your distance, but using the shorter body to limit the amount of throw. Again, lots of options. Now, since I'm going to have to swap out these turnbuckles, the turnbuckle kit comes with all the turnbuckles I need, 2 for each side up front and 1 for each side in the rear, but it has the old style ball cup, and I'm not a big fan of those. I picked up a set of ball cups that have the straight through hole, so if I want to move one of these linkages to a different position, like say I'm trying to adjust the front end up here, and I want to move you know, outward or inward to lengthen or shorten this link. Likewise in the rear, I don't have to pop the ball cup off and then remove the ball stud. I can just stick an Allen wrench, a hex wrench, right in through the top, because it has a hole in the top. So that makes these last a lot longer, because you're not popping them on and off. If you've ever done a lot of modding to your car and a lot of tuning, you know that over time, as you pop these ball cups on and off, on and off, on and off, they get loose, and then they can pop off during a race and cause you a problem. So anyway, since I was changing up the arms, I went ahead and got an extra set of front spindles, and I already had in my parts box here, I've got the upgraded 2.0 spindles that are adjustable, so I'm probably going to use these since everything is going to be modded out anyway. And I've got the low roll center kit and the shims for that. And I've got a couple of different toe plates, so I can adjust the amount of rear toe that I have. The biggest one I have is a 3.5. I've got a 3, and I believe I've got a 2.5 as well. It's already in use, or had been in use. Okay, this big bag just has everything that I pulled off this when I put it together, organized in bags, the transmission bag, etc., etc. I am going to be running mid-engine, which sounds kind of counterproductive when you're doing drag racing, but actually having a mid-motor, gives you more weight toward the center of the car and less weight hanging off the back, so it's easier to keep the front end on the ground. Also, because of the direction the motor rotates when it's in that position, because it's running an extra internal gear in the transmission, there's 4 gears instead of 3, the rotation and the torque of the motor wants to keep the rear end, you know, planted. Now, I'm hoping these are going to work. I picked up 2 of the idler gears in aluminum instead of the plastic ones. I picked up a couple spare plastics. I blew out the transmission a while back, and so I want to make sure that it's as bulletproof as possible. The only downside is that the differential gear is plastic. I could not find a metal one of these. Robinson Racing used to make one. They don't make them anymore, and they are unavailable. I don't know if there was an issue with them, and they were recalled, but I have searched the internet worldwide and cannot find anybody who's got one, new or used, for sale. Okay, here we have front and rear wheels and tires. Just a nice little narrow front wheel and a nice big slick in the rear. These aren't glued yet. I'm going to go through an entire video on prepping tires and gluing them. For drag racing, that is going to be incredibly important, because you can pull these tires right off the rim if you don't do it correctly, and that would end your run. Now, I'm a big fan of ceramic bearings. I think they're definitely worth the money in most cases. ball differentials are just incredibly smooth. If you've watched my videos on the F1, I did a bearing kit in that, and the ceramic bearings are just phenomenal. I also did a ceramic thrust bearing. If you know what the thrust bearing is, when you're building a diff, you've got to put those few little balls together with grease between two washers. This actually has a single unit. Hopefully I've got this in the camera and close enough for you to see. You can see that the bearings are in this little encasement here, and then you have the these little washers, but they're not just a flat washer, they're grooved. So it's also using ceramic bearings. It's a caged bearing. So there wasn't an entire kit available for the car because the car is a little dated, but you know, this is one of those examples where an older car can be brought back to life and made into something, you know, far better than it ever was originally even. So I didn't worry about getting bearings for the front wheel hubs or for the rear hubs, but I did get bearings for the entire transmission. So every bearing in the transmission is ceramic, and that's going to really reduce the amount of stress. It's going to help the car punch off the line. Now, as far as clutches go, or slipper clutches, I may run the original clutch. This is one of the things that died on my transmission. This got, there was so much torque it bent this pin. I picked up some fresh clutch pads and another spring. Now, I may not use the slipper clutch. Some people don't. Some people swear by it. So I picked up a direct drive system, and this will eliminate the slipper clutch altogether. For the class I'm running in, that may or may not be beneficial. I'm going to experiment and tune with it and tinker and see how it goes. I'm probably going to initially set it up without a slipper and work on adjusting the speed controls, launch settings, because I've got a nice Tekin speed control, and it has I've got the electronic communication box, and it has a lot of settings. So I'm going to tinker with that and see how it goes, and if I'm having too much trouble controlling the car, I'll put the slipper on. I picked up a Castle capacitor pack. I think this is going to really help with, again, the launch, the type of racing. You know, it's a handful of seconds, straight line run, and you're trying to get everything you can out of that battery. So I'm using some very high discharge rate batteries, and like 140C, and I'm going to use that capacitor pack. So is there anything I haven't covered? This is just some spacers for suspension tuning. I'm going with the original servo that was in here. It's still in phenomenal shape and works great. It's a Savox SC 1233. Never had a problem with my Savox servos. Some people like them, some people don't. I've had many of them, and I've never busted a gear or you know, wrecked a servo or had any issues with them. So that's that as far as all the, you know, what's going to go in here. I'm going to start by rebuilding the transmission. I'm going to strip the rest of the stuff off this chassis. I've got the body. It's a Protoform Octane. It is a drag specific body, nice and wide, so it's going to you know, have enough room under the fenders. But even with a body this wide, I've still got to narrow the suspension on that truck, which just tells you how big the short course trucks are as far as their width. It's very stocky. So that's got to be pared back. So I'm going to start working on this. It's got a nice big wing that comes off, hangs off the rear trunk section. I think I'm going to do just a nice metallic red, maybe some pair of white racing stripes down the center. We'll see how that pans out. So again, next step is, after getting all the parts and organizing stuff, getting the motor and everything, is to strip all this down within reason. I don't need to take this part off, but I'm gonna switch out the arms. I'm gonna move the battery tray connectors here for now, because I'm probably gonna put the speed control further rearward, rebuild the transmission, and start getting that rear suspension set up so I can start seeing how things lay, and we'll go from there. You know, it is a big process here, and there's a lot of little parts, but again, you know, because this is such a dated short course truck, a lot of these parts are on sale or very inexpensive, just marked down, because not many people are buying them anymore, which also makes them a little hard to find at times, but you know, such as it is. In any event, I've seen multiple people using this very same chassis, the TLR short course truck, of one iteration or another. There's the original 22 SCT, then there's the 2.0 and the 3.0, and I think that's where they stopped. But they're very similar. So if you want to get into drag racing, the 22 is a good platform to build on. Some people are going with the Slash. A lot of people are doing the Slash chassis, but it's a plastic chassis. It's going to have a lot more twist to it. It's not going to be as easily modified. It's a rear engine with no mid-engine option. That's one of the nice things about the 22 short course trucks, is that they come with both transmission packs. So you can run a rear engine if you want to, or you can run the mid-engine transmission setup if you want to. It's your choice. So that gives you a tremendous amount of potential for tuning and tinkering and building something you want and that you're happy with. I hope you enjoy these videos. If this is something you're interested in, please click like, please subscribe, leave me any comments, any questions you have. If you're interested in getting into this and you'd like some advice on something, let me know what you want to know, and I'll try to find an answer for you or point you in a direction where you can find the information you need. Thanks for watching.